What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Faith Unaltered Open Mic. Hopefully, my internet is working well enough that you can hear me. If I'm lagging, let me know in the chat. If you can hear me, let me know. We have a special guest for us today. I have somebody that I want to bring on that has been an interesting blessing for me over the last week to be able to meet her and talk to her and get to know her a little bit and even feature on her brand new show that I want to ask you guys to be part of the online blessing sphere that we occupy here and give her some support. Her name is Amber. Welcome to Faith Unaltered. Amber, her podcast is called Bound by Grace Podcast. And I am so pleased to have her here and talk to us during an open mic. So, welcome, Amber. Thanks for hanging out. And take a second to tell us about yourself and about your show and a little bit about what it is that you think God's called you to do with that.
Yeah, I am so thankful to be here. I really am thankful for the support that you've shown me just in the past week. You have such a lovely heart, and you're so willing to help that it's truly already helped me in the learning process of how podcasting works. But yeah, Bound by Grace podcast. Um, is was originally created because I saw a post from a girlfriend that I've been friends with on Facebook for 20 years, but we've never spoken since 20 years ago. We went to high school together, and I've seen some of her posts, but I just kind of scroll through. This particular post really caught my eye, and it stated, it's something like this. We need more women um, in healthy marriages and relationships to be more open and loud about how to do that. Um, Instead of leaving it to the toxic and bitter women who always will let you know what they're thinking, to raise up the younger generation of women who are thinking about marriage, who are married. So it called to me right then. I was like, I'm not perfect, but I need to do this. And so I reached out to her, and she was absolutely on board. So we started that day. Um, what I have found in bringing guests on my podcast, because what I really wanted was to help marriages. That was the original plan, but God has another plan apparently, because it is starting to evolve into, we're discussing the human condition. We're discussing how
Mm.
spirituality can help that and guide you, and what real issues we don't talk about enough. Um, just as an example, I was on a podcast yesterday with a pastor, and he bluntly asked me, he said, what issues do you think that pastors and churches do not talk about enough? And I just dug my heels in and dove in and told him exactly what I thought. Um, and he was in agreement with most of it. And he was like, I think it stirred him up to where he started thinking, oh, that's we could totally do that. Like, he kept just thinking that kind of stuff. So it was a really good podcast. I'm hoping to open that door for a lot more people to have those hard, those vulnerable, and those sometimes embarrassing conversations. So that way we can all be better Christians, more so, all be better human beings and Christ centered, have a relationship with God. So that's basically what we're about.
That's wonderful. That's really cool. I like that what you're doing is responding well to what God has for you and then adapting well to what God's doing with it rather than
Yeah.
trying to be resistive, because a lot of people try to dig their heels in, do the apostle Paul and say, no, Lord, I want to go and minister to these people, I want to do this ministry, and he's like, it's not what I
Yes.
asked you to do. no, Lord, I want to do this ministry. Doesn't sound like you're wasting any time with that. So well done. That's something to be praised, because that's a lot of people's issue, especially when you're doing something that you're building from the ground up. Get this brand loyalty situation going, and then you don't want to move. You don't want to adapt. You want to just
Yeah,
settle and find the grooves that it works in, you know?
just as an example of what our podcast looks like or will be looking like here soon, there is a Christian counselor that's going to be coming on. His name is Sam Sorio. I think that's how you say his last name. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's been doing this for years, and he's a Christian counselor. But he has a very niche Christian counseling service that deals in intimacy issues in the marriage bed and relationships, and also healing from sexual trauma in men and women. So I have an anonymous source who's going to come on. He's not going to be on visually, but he is going to be on audio while we're on video. And he's going to be open and honest and vulnerable with us about his background in sexual trauma when he was a kid, and how that shaped him, and how that molded him, and how that trauma came out in his marriage. With Sam, Dr. Sam, doing a mini trauma session as a podcast episode.
That's really rad. I like that. What an opportunity. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, look, yeah, I like that. It sounds like you might be gaining some subscribers here too. Deborah showing up. Like I said, I remember I was telling you that Deborah was going to show up and that she would love the idea and that she would totally be on board with that. I knew that she would like that idea. She said, Amber, praise God for your channel. Praise God, he knows what he's doing, and he knows where your channel will lead and who will come to listen and join in. So, yep, trust him. Speaking of trust, what's really rad is actually the reason why I connected with Amber is through a mutual group online in Facebook. And we started talking about a potential episode that I would come onto her podcast to do about the male perspective in a godly marriage, or male perspective in marriage to be godly, let's say more like, and what it would be discussing is the cost, or let's say the expensiveness, just the sheer cost of trust, because trust is one of those things that a lot of people, I don't think, take seriously enough, because if you really go behind the curtain on everything that you do, trust is the only currency in the whole universe that really matters. When you get underneath everything and you get to the bottom of it, trust is the only currency that can have any meaning. Because even in barter, even in outright, even in outright currency, physical currency, it's still based on the fact that you believe that that's worth something. You're trusting that that's worth something.
Oh,
and
yeah.
behind it, you're trusting that the person that's giving it to you is giving you something authentic. Oh, that's pretty rad. Look at that. Spencer is here. My buddy Spencer Owen is also a Christian therapist and would love to watch your episode. So yeah, this is pretty cool. That's really wonderful. That's a great opportunity. I like that a lot. So praise God
He's
for
going to
that.
do a series. So he's also doing one with me about a sexless marriage. So
Okay.
I'll be interviewing, not that mine is sexless, but it's definitely not as often as I would like. And so he's going to counsel me as if a little mini session on an episode as well. So I'm going to try and find people that align with his niche, and then see if they're willing to do episodes so he can fit all of them into a series with Dr. Sam.
Okay. That's cool. Wow. That's actually a pretty big project then.
Yeah.
Nice. That's wonderful. That's cool. Well, that'll keep you busy for a minute then, huh?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's cool. And just for everybody to know, what we were talking about, I came on her show over the last week. We've been talking because when we had first connected, we were talking about podcast stuff and scheduling and what's your show and trading, certain things like that. And then I asked her something that was a little bit more personal but technical, and I asked her about soteriology, which is everybody that's here probably knows already. It's the study of salvation and the doctrine of salvation. The answer to the question, what must I do to be saved? And so we talked about that. And on her channel, I was able to record a candid conversation that we had that we didn't plan out. That really was just kind of, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think about this kind of conversation? It ended up being a really interesting introductory kind of course to the importance of the doctrine of salvation, and maybe a 10,000-foot view of what my views on soteriology are at present. And so that was a really neat thing. That's in the, if you guys want to see that, it's in the description. The links down there, as well as links to Amber's YouTube channel and her website and her what is it? It's not a link tree. What is it?
It's dot profile. It has everything, every way that you can get in contact with me, all my socials on that profile.
Cool. Neat.
Oh, thank you.
That's fantastic.
She said I have an epic backdrop.
Yeah, it seems like people are liking your setup there. That's cool. Right on. So we've got some folks. It seems like everybody's clicked in. I actually have a buddy backstage that works with me that wanted to come on for the open mic. So is there anything else that you wanted to go over for your channel before we hop in with the audience?
No, I don't think so. I'm ready to hop in. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, then I'll drop the StreamYard link in the chat and then pin it in the comments so that it doesn't go anywhere. And then, yeah, right on. So first of all, thank you, by the way, Amber, for coming on and hanging out and everything. Everybody pray for Amber because she's awesome and she's tired and the Lord needs to bless her right now. So what's up, Mike Starr? What's up, buddy?
Yo, what's up? How y'all doing?
Oh, man. This is cool. So, Amber, you don't know this, but this is also Mike Starr's first time being on a Faith Unaltered stream on screen officially. So this is pretty rad.
I was on the other podcast that you had a couple of times, but that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. Before Faith Unaltered, I had Complete Sinner's Guide.
That's right.
But he hasn't been on a Faith Unaltered stream yet, and so this is pretty neat. This is history right now.
History in the making. And you have a star on your show for the first time.
Exactly, I have a star on my show, Mr. Star. So Mike and I both work at a place in Richmond, California called the Bay Area Rescue Mission, which is an overnight homeless shelter and emergency shelter for men, women, and children, as well as a 12-month Christian-based rehabilitation program for people to get back on their feet, not only from mishap and economic strife, but also from addiction and from abuse and from codependence and all the other things that keep people slave to sin out here on the street. So we have a really cool job, and Mike is one of those people that I'm blessed to work with day to day. So it's kind of cool to have him on here. So this is going to be really fun. And also, look at that. Jacob also is here.
Hey,
welcome. Jacob, yo.
What's going on, buddy? This is cool.
Much. I just dropped by to say hi.
Right on. Hi.
I don't know if I have anything to say about the topic tonight because you know what Amber's got going on, but I just stopped in because I usually stop in when you have an open mic.
Fair. And thank you for that. We appreciate your support. Even people who aren't married presently still need the relevance of good Christian marriage. If for no other reason, then they need to know why it is such a beautiful picture of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you're here anyway. Oh, and another new face. Look at this. Joel, what's going on, buddy?
I need to get some bricks for my background. I'll be right back.
What's going on, Joel? It's nice to meet you, bud.
Hey team. Yeah, I'm a Kiwi, so I thought I'd throw on a different accent.
Nice.
Right on. Yeah, that's cool. So now we've covered both sides of the planet and both hemispheres as well. That's pretty rad.
Should I use my Caucasian accent?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. So Joel actually I just connected with this last week, I believe, as well, over a potential podcast invite as well. So this is kind of cool. This is getting really expansive all of a sudden.
I tell you what, Josh, you have excited me so much with what you've been doing here that I'm like super keen to do exactly this at some point, and I'm getting all these ideas from you. So you are now my master as I am your Padawan.
Ooh, hello.
Oh man. Well, do me a favor, Joel. Then
we grant you a seat on the council, but we do not recognize you as a master.
There you go.
Amber turned her camera off.
Y'all are nerding out right now.
Oh yeah, that's good. All right, so do me a favor, Joel. Tell us a little bit about your channel too, because I don't think anybody here is familiar with your channel yet.
Yeah, sure. I run the Jesus Magnet podcast. Please let me know if my mic's a little bit loud. I just got new equipment and I'm just working it in. Yeah, so I run the Jesus Magnet podcast, where we basically connect with missionaries around Southeast Asia. We're actually based in Thailand, and we're full-time in the podcasting world, talking to missionaries that are on like the front lines. For example, we had a guy called Sky Barkley, who's a Free Burma Ranger who literally runs into the heart of warfare, and with a gun in one hand and a Bible in the other, and he's saving people physically and spiritually. And so we get those kind of people on our show, and I mean all sorts of people, but that's why we're based in Southeast Asia at this stage. Usually for the last couple of years, we've been just getting the average Joe Christian is kind of what we're going for. And we've seen awesome things in people's testimonies where they just share their life story. And then just recently, we have managed to score our first big name to come on our show, Ray Comfort. He lives in America, so he's coming on the show on Thursday. Yeah.
Wow. The Banana Man.
The Banana Man, yeah. Yeah. First thing I'm going to ask him is, do you know where you're going when you die? That's how he leads his street evangelism.
Are you a blaspheming murderer at heart?
Yeah. I love the accent.
Yeah, he's pretty fun. I some of the stuff that he does. I'm like, that's such an interesting and like disarming way of asking that. You know, he's very good at keeping this introductory level engagement like down here at the bottom, and I have such a tendency to like meow, you know, so I admire that very much.
And I'm just excited to be here with you guys.
Right on. Oh yeah, Sticky Notes on My Brain says, new to this channel, just found the videos about Hebrew Bible. They are great. Are one of them coming tonight? Not tonight. We do have an entire playlist of Hebrew Bible breakdown stuff. Both of the hosts of that channel, one of them has their own channel, and she should be still in the chat right now. If she's not, she's missing an opportunity to plug. But her channel is actually called When Deep Calls Deep, and her name is Amber, and not the one on screen, but a different Amber. Got plenty of Ambers. Walmart's having a sale right now. So they are great. When is the next one coming out? Probably a little while from now. They're taking a hiatus on that project presently. But we do have other content that's relevant to the Old Testament that comes out. And if you like Old Testament imagery and the narrative structure of the Old Testament, especially, you can check out my playlist on Cosmic Corner, because I talk about narrative structure a lot. But Hebrew Bible Breakdown is definitely awesome. And I also am looking forward to when that starts to take off again with Courtney. And if Amber is able to take up a project like that again, it would be really, really rad. But that is on pause for now, unfortunately. So welcome to the channel. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. Definitely hit the like button for this video if you haven't already. If you're you're taking forever to hit the like button, then maybe we need to pray for you. Maybe we need to ask the Lord to soften your heart and ask you to hit the like button and bless us also. There it is. See, there it is. We knew what it was. Somebody needed to soften their heart. It was Mike. That's all right.
You can still pray for me though. You can still pray for me though.
I do pray for you. You know what's cool? Like this is really rad to see something like this come together. Our older brother Jesus is very intentional when he does things like this. This is really cool. So I'm really happy to see new faces pop on this often. This is really cool. I'm definitely blessed by that. Do you guys have anything that you feel like talking about, particularly as far as the subject matter? It is an open mic, so you pop on. If you got anything that's currently in the back of your head, go ahead and rattle off something. Or if you got a question or whatever, go ahead, chat. Also, super chats get priority, obviously. So if you want your thing first, just toss a super chat. If not, we'll still get to your questions in the order that they're received. But yeah, do you guys have any topics off the top of your head that have been kind of rattling around for you today?
What about that story, Josh, about Thursday and Friday?
Thursday and Friday.
You remember the little God orchestrating some stuff?
Say again?
God orchestrating some stuff over on Thursday and Friday. Just was some really incredible things. I don't know how any human could actually kind of design the story that happened between Thursday and Friday, but God orchestrated something that was pretty
that's right. You had remembered you had mentioned at the barbecue. Yeah, go ahead. That's really rad.
All right. So I have the pleasure and opportunity to be a part of the classroom activities here at the Bay Area Rescue Mission for 6 hours a day. And my pastor is actually one of the instructors. It's because of him is why I'm going to his church. He teaches a class called, oh my gosh, it's slipping my mind. But anyways, he teaches a class on Sunday or on Thursday mornings and afternoon. And there was and the topic was the Bible. And there was a question asked, do I need to read my Bible in order to be saved? And of course, Pastor Sebastian said, no, that doesn't need to happen. Presented the gospel. And a lot of times in that classroom, some of these guys like to argue and rebut and try to throw the teacher off by saying things, bringing up some weird questions. Why is this not in the Bible, et cetera, et cetera. And I raised my hands and had a little input. I was talking about my idea was, or my thought was, that there are so many people across the globe that have never touched a Bible, seen a Bible. No one's ever read them a Bible, but because of word of mouth or dreams or visions or whatever, that they get to hear about Jesus. And earlier that morning, I had done a devotion from Voice of the Martyrs. And it was referencing a pastor named Richard Warrenbrand, who was he was a prisoner in Romania for being a pastor. He was thrown in prison, and they threw him in solitary confinement because they got sick of him sharing the gospel with other guards and other inmates. People were coming to know Jesus. And so they threw him in solitary confinement for 10 years. He had no light. Very harsh conditions. This is a man who had been beaten many, many times. And so he started to preach to an unseen audience. And throughout those 10 years, he had memorized all his sermons. And then while that was happening, there was someone in Canada, and this is a letter that was written to Pastor Warrenbrand. There's a guy in Canada that grew up in a Christian home, strayed from God, ended up in a Canadian prison, and he cried out to God and said, hey, God, I want to come back to you. But if there's another lonely prisoner that wants to get close to you, could you please send me his words? And so God told him just to sit and to be still. And then what started coming to mind was what sounded like sermons from a long way away, from a distance away. And so Pastor Wurmbrand had been released after 10 years of solitary confinement, moved to the United States, started doing ministry there. And then the guy from Canada, he gets released from prison and goes to a bookstore, and he sees a book written by Pastor Wurmbrand that was sermons from solitary confinement. He starts to read this book, and he recognizes that the thoughts that were being given to him were these sermons that Pastor Wurmbrand were preaching to an unknown audience or unseen audience. And I referenced that story. And I said, there's another way, which is pretty remarkable, that the Holy Spirit can send those sermons to another person. And then Pastor Wurmbrand had said that 2 more people sent him letters with almost the exact same details, that they were given messages of his that he was preaching in solitary confinement to that unseen audience. And then I also referenced a guy named Kim Smith, he has been a missionary to Liberia in Africa. And my friend Santino, who was in the classroom at the time, had been on a mission trip with Pastor Kim Smith. And Kim Smith carries translations in his backpack, probably close to 20, 30 different translations of Bibles on SIM cards. And that's how he presents and shares the gospel and gives people Bibles through these SIM cards. And he's been doing this ministry, I think, for about a good 20 years. And then at the end, I was done. I shared that, and Pastor said, thank you. And he said, hey, you know that we met with Pastor Wurmbrand. He came and actually spoke at our church. We had lunch with him. And I was just like, wow, that is really incredible. And then Santino had asked me later on that afternoon. He said, hey, how did you know that Kim Smith was in town from Liberia? I had no clue that he was in town that weekend or that week. He was on furlough here in California and had been staying. And Santino had said, I just had lunch with him the other day. I spent some time with him. And that blew my mind, that stories, just that story from my devotion in the morning, Pastor Sebastian has met him along with other people at my church. And then Santino had met up with Kim Smith, who I'd referenced that morning. And then the next day I went to a barbecue at my friend John Lee's house. And his parents, John Lee's parents, ran the Bay Area Rescue Mission for about 35 years, starting in about 1965, I believe, up until about 10 or 15 years ago, and about 20 years ago. And I'm at this barbecue, and then Kim Smith comes in the door and sits down and spends like the rest of the afternoon with me, talking and eating and stuff. And I told him about this story from class the previous day, and that I shared with him. And he was mind blown that, only God can orchestrate something like that, to where stories from somewhere in Romania, Liberia, and then the coolest thing is later that afternoon, another missionary shows up from Ethiopia who has been distributing Bibles in Ethiopia for the last 10 or so years, something like 60 to 70,000 Bibles they've been distributing in Ethiopia.
Wow.
And just put another order in for another 7,000 Bibles. And then he had a conversation with Kim Smith, and who was only in town until the end of this month. Well, Kim Smith was invited to talk. At a pastors conference where about 100 pastors that have been that basically come to know Christ through this Bible ministry started in Ethiopia. So Kim Smith is going to go spend time with them at a conference for about a week in Ethiopia within the next couple of months. And so both their ministries have grown like double just for that chance encounter. And only God can like literally orchestrate that thing. So it's just mind blowing. It is. What's really cool is that it happens right here. Things like that happen here at the mission. It happens so often that it just, God will confirm scriptures through instructors one day. Then I'll hear the same verse at church the next week. And then the next week here in class, there'll be another instructor here. They'll bring up that same verse with the same topic. it's just amazing how God continues to move, and how he brings people together, brings people from all over the globe in one place at one time. And it's just so cool when you're obedient and just try to serve him and allow the Holy Spirit to move. You get caught up and you're in the middle of all that. So,
man, that's so neat.
Yeah, it's just so cool. And just to be a part of stuff like that, and things like that happen on a regular basis here. I always look forward to like the next day, because I never know who or what I'm going to encounter just in this little city here in Richmond. So
yeah, no kidding.
Right,
man, that's neat. That's so cool too. Does anybody else, like anybody in the chat or anybody here on that's actually in the studio, anybody else have any stories of meeting one of like the people that you looked up to spiritually, kind of on a whim, like God just kind of showing up one day? Because that's such a weird but cool thing. My wife and I joke and say that's God being cute again, just showing up. And we recently had an episode on Cosmic Corner about the hiddenness of God. And one of the things that I came to in that is God hides himself on purpose, and it's for us. And it's not because he doesn't want us to see him. It's because he can only allow us to see him in certain ways. And we just need the eyes to see. But if he showed himself naked, we would simply die. And so God has to show up veiled in all creation. And here we are wondering why he's not obvious. You've never read Romans 1 then. What a blessed God, man! It's amazing. Does anybody else here have a story of meeting like your spiritual hero? Because that is pretty cool. I think that's pretty rad. I think I can remember probably, maybe in terms of like influence, I was able to meet Maddie Montgomery. I don't know if anybody here is a metal fan, but a band called For Today. They ceased being a band in 2016, and I was at their farewell tour in California, at the last place they were going to play in California ever. And I was at that show, and I got to meet Maddie, the vocalist, who is also a pastor, who's been somebody who's deeply influential to me, not only musically but also spiritually as well. And I got to meet him and talk to him. It wasn't nearly as random as Mike's story, because I technically was there because I wanted to see him live, so I knew he was going to be there. But it happened to be a very small venue, and so it was actually very easy because I didn't have to do anything. There was no backstage. There was just the rest of the room, and so he was there, and so I got to kind of like talk to him, and it was very interesting because he seemed engaged, because I didn't fanboy, and I treated him like a person, like just some guy that you meet at a bar, and so like just talking to him and meeting him and being able to have that interaction was definitely deeply influential to me. But it was not nearly as random seeming as Mike's. That's definitely pretty neat. I like that a lot.
Well, you can always start a new cover band for call it For Yesterday.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a guy on our show, not me, but his name's Terry Mortlock, and he's the right hand man for Todd White, and
that sounded familiar.
Yeah, so he talks about kind of people have this perception of Todd White, and he gets to watch it because they see him as a little bit of a Christian celebrity, and listening to how Todd, basically, if somebody comes up to Todd and they're like, "Oh, can I have your autograph, or can you pray for me because you're Todd White?" Like nothing, like only because he is well known. Todd does a really good job of bringing them back to earth, is what he says. And he's like, "I'm just a normal person. I'm a regular guy, and I love Jesus just as much as you do." And I think when I was hearing that, like, what a great response for somebody that does have massive influence, that is a Christian, that they really try to, I guess, not waive their celebrity status and get inflated by it, but to constantly teach yourself that humility, because it would be so easy to get carried away and that sort of oh, everyone's watching me sort of attitude. But yeah, he and his job, this guy Terry, his job is to film all of every time Todd's like praying for somebody or whatever it is. That's a nice looking logo.
It is. Is that something? What is that something that you're sharing there, Jacob? Is that from you? What is that from?
That is from me. I just
Okay.
was playing
I
around.
just noticed
I've
it
never
at the
been in
bottom. I thought
StreamYard.
somebody else hopped in. I was like, "What is that?"
Sorry, I've never
No,
been
you're
in
okay.
StreamYard, and I thought that might appear at the bottom of my screen in the corner or something like that. So I just tried it, and then
Gotcha.
nothing happened. But that's all right.
No, it's
Yeah,
pretty neat, though.
we need more influencers to have that same mindset. I think even in the Christian realm, relationships with Christ, having that relationship with Christ, if you get too big and you have too many eyes on you, you can easily start to feel like, oh, I must be better than most. And that's not what's going on. Christ is using you because he feels that you have that influence, and you need to remember to be humble and give all the glory to God.
Yeah. Well, what's
That's so
interesting too, like it's kind of neat being able to do something like a podcast and host something like this. And then after a while, people do start to recognize your name places, which is really interesting. With it comes some sense of really like a backdoor notoriety, because it's not like I'm Dr. So and so, but even still, that recognizability is an interesting thing. Just knowing that it's not necessarily like consciously that you would think that you're better than somebody, but you almost get it in your head subconsciously again that you're more worth listening to than the next guy. That's something that Satan tries to use as a carrot on a stick for somebody like me, because I am well listened to. It's not necessarily something that I think that I'm more right or wrong than somebody else, but I definitely know that I can talk, and I'm pretty good at it. And so I use it the best that I can to think that I'm going to bless other people and be a blessing to God and do what he wants me to. But then there is that sneaking pride under the surface that kind of lingers there, almost, I don't want to say naturally, but almost kind of without effort. Like it doesn't really take an effort to want to be heard, especially if you're an extrovert like me. So like I being wanting to be heard is an interesting, it's a weird, it's a strange drug, I'll say that much.
I've got a good story that I shared at our podcast, at our Bible study last night. We were talking about pride and humility, and a few years back, I play the drums in our church, and I've
Me
done
too.
Yeah, and we both have beards.
Praise God.
That's so good. Yeah. So I play the drums for like years and years, and probably 15 years, 3 times a week at the same church. And then for about 2 years, we had this new worship leader who is incredibly anointed with her voice, really, really talented. And I remember the pastor came on stage after worship and said, I just want to, her name's Chloe, and he said, I just want to really, say, Chloe, you've done such a great job at being the worship leader. You have been so diligent here 3 times a week for 2 years. And I remember thinking, what the heck? I've been I've been here 15 years, 3 times a week, and had never had any recognition. And I remember sitting behind the drum kit in my little fish bowl, and just having this private conversation with God, going, why does she get recognition and I don't? And I was like really upset by it. This little angry drummer in the corner. And then we played through a couple of worship songs, and the Lord answered. He said to me, Joel, you couldn't handle it. And I was like, what? What do you mean?
Oh, that's important.
Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean, Lord? He said, well, if I gave you recognition or somebody gave you recognition, then that's something you would chase. And you would be now worshiping for man and not worshiping for me. And yeah.
I bet that was
Ooh.
humbling.
Oh, yeah. It was great. And now every time I do not get recognized, I thank the Lord. And it's like, yes, Lord, I'm doing this for you, not for me. And it's like this constant putting myself back in my place. I'm not any higher than I'm trying to be. I'm doing everything for the Lord. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard sometimes to recognize something like that. I it's interesting too, because I almost feel like Michael know what I'm talking about. I feel like I live a double life sometimes. I go on this internet thing and I'm like being able to talk to people, and do this whole thing and be heard and be seen in some genuine sense. And then the rest of my time I spend just with my family, very quietly in my home or else at work. And I'm not somebody who's a visual at work. I'm very much behind the scenes at work. It's my job to make myself as unseen and irrelevant as possible at my job, because I'm the maintenance guy. You don't want him to be visible when like, you know what I mean? Like I should be making myself as invisible as possible, and so I spend most of my time being a fly on the wall, and so most of the ministry that happens in my life in that capacity happens in very secret places, like away from everybody, one-on-one conversations, behind a dumpster or something. And I think Mike has in his head which dumpster it is, too. That's
yeah,
right. Yeah. I saw the visual cross your face. So the like, it's just interesting to kind of have that balance. I feel like there's a blessing in being able to recognize, like, the need to feel validated is not an evil, but it is an easy way to find an unruly master, because you will not be able to walk out of it once you walk into a need for approval. So it's very difficult to mediate for yourself how it is that you're going to kind of like accept the fact that you want to be wanted, because it's not wrong to want to be wanted, right? But to need the validation of being wanted in order to feel valid, right? Like, every person's not going to like you. Every person's not going to agree with you. Every person's not going to enjoy you or be kind to you or whatever, right? Not every person's going to receive you the same. Christ was certainly not well received by all people. That's for sure. And
especially his hometown.
What'd you say?
Especially his hometown.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm pretty liked in my hometown. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. But it's like it's interesting to kind of consider that a perfect man was not well received in most places, and yet we often are offended by the fact that we're not well received in the place that we we just build these strange expectations, and then when you like look at them real clearly, they end up being something that's kind of like, man, Lord, thank you for protecting me from myself.
Oh, yeah.
Holy smokes, because I got some snakes in my garden, bro. I don't even know. Like, there's some of them I haven't even spotted out yet. I'm just waiting. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Let's see here. I'm gonna read some of the. You guys can keep talking. I'm just reading some of the comments over here on the side.
Hey, Michael, I'm quite keen to hear about your podcast. I kind of tapped in for Amber's, which, by the way, Amber, you got one of the best backgrounds I've ever seen.
Dude, my wife said the same thing.
Thank you.
It's so cool. Michael, what do you do?
I don't have a podcast at the moment. I've been wanting to get one going. Just technical difficulties, not the right bandwidth or internet. I ended up buying a microphone and some equipment that don't quite work as well. And so I got discouraged. I've been putting it off. And so I've been wanting to start one, and I did a couple of episodes where I was doing interviews of guys that were in the program just to test some things out, getting their stories and getting their testimonies of where they came from. And I was really excited about that. But then the second one was technical difficulty. So I just ended up going, you know what, I'll just try back another time. And then procrastination is one of those things where I keep myself really, really busy here at the mission and doing daily duties and doing extra stuff and ministry and everything else that I just kind of swept it under the rug and been meaning to get that started. And then, of course, my boss hears my voice and said, "What are you doing over there?" I'm like, "I'm on my friend's podcast." "Oh, yeah, you've been wanting to do that for a long time, haven't you?" And I went, "Oh, yes, I have." But just a nice, firm, friendly reminder that I really need to like jump on the opportunity and start getting it going, because Josh here was my main inspiration for even wanting to do one and buying the laptop, buying the equipment that I thought was good. But don't buy equipment that you see reviewed in the Philippines, because it turns out to be not really all that great. No, nothing bad about the Philippines, but I'm like, oh, cool. These guys are really, it looks like it's great equipment, but it's not. It just wires everywhere and stuff. So, but yeah.
Nice. I'm selling the first version of a Roadcaster. So if that's something that you would like, I can send that over to you.
Oh wow! Okay, that would be kind of cool. Wow. Yeah.
So relevant to what we were just talking about in the Christian influence sphere, Spencer had a really interesting point here. Which, by the way, you see his title there, "Trauma Informed Church Kid." That is an awesome podcast. He's an awesome guy who is working and going out of his way to try to heal the broken wounds of people who have the spiritual battles in their lives from old traumas, especially spiritual traumas. And this guy is very, very concerned about how it is that people see and understand the Lord and why it is that they serve him. And he has a beautiful heart. So you should go check out his channel also. He said the influence problem could be part of why things like Michael Tate happen. That's the guy from Newsboys and DC Talk. If you guys don't know about that, it's an incredibly terrible.
I know about them, but I didn't hear what occurred.
So Michael Tate came forward and admitted that even though all of the details might be different or whatever, all of the accusations that were leveled against him were largely true, that he had been using a lot of alcohol and cocaine and been sexually promiscuous and even doing things like sexual assaults to people, unwanted sexual touching, especially with men, things like that. And he admitted to a lot of this stuff, and the band broke up. And so this was all released within the last couple of weeks. So it's very new. The band kind of dissolved in January. They went on a hiatus, but now they're officially gone. And a lot of people are blacklisting and removing a lot of the content that they ever produced in their live shows and stuff from the internet because of what happened. It was really awful. But yeah, that's really bad for me personally, because all three of the members of DC Talk were very formative for me. Their music was really impactful for my life when I was very young. And so to see them kind of dissolve that way and fall apart and fragment is just very tragic for my heart.
I think that's why I'm so like, I think it's so important that we don't idolize and remember they're human too, because if someone like that with that much influence can do those things, anyone can. But we need to remember they're human. They also fight temptation and things like that. Like, it doesn't mean our God isn't stronger than that. So just that's why when we were having that conversation about putting your legs in your pants the same way as everyone else does, staying humble, always giving glory to God, and always checking yourself, right? Don't allow this fame or all these people's eyes on you change what you started this for, what your goal was, how you were called.
Right. Exactly. So he says the lack of humility or sense that rules don't apply in the same way, or that he could too handle it, couldn't handle it, right? So I think it's wisdom on God's end a lot of the time that when we see a missed opportunity, oftentimes what we're lamenting is something that wouldn't have gone the way that we intended, and God
Yes.
is saving us from ourselves and our
Yes.
good intentions. Heaven save us from our good intentions. That's the prayer
Mhm.
right now, seriously, because I think a lot of the time these things are rooted in good intentions, or at least our intentions that we perceive as good, because they seem
Mhm.
like things that we would want and that we think God wants from us. And so,
Mhm.
because we imagine that and we build an expectation around it, when the thing starts to fall to pieces a little bit, or starts to be even in the slightest bit, adversarial or difficult, or costly to us personally, that we would have to sacrifice for it, then we start to wonder, what's going on. And then it's interesting to note that sometimes the good things that God has for us are the things that that He has intention for us to sacrifice for, right?
Mhm.
And so it's something that you need to be discerning about, obviously. But it's interesting to see that, sometimes God just makes something inaccessible to us anymore. And we go through this process of, mourning the loss of the thing or the person or the relationship or the opportunity, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and even in those moments, sometimes it can be wisdom to note that God's not doing something mean to you or doing
Mhm.
something on accident, that sort of thing. It's really that, life is full of variables that we ourselves can't actually see. And God doesn't
Mhm.
have any of the lack that we have. He's got a perspective that we just simply can't afford for ourselves. And He's proven Himself to be trustworthy in the past, and so
Mhm.
it's a good attitude check as well to be able to say, when I can't handle something, that I should be able to trust the Lord, because He's never proven Himself to be, He's never given me a reason to fear, as it's been said here before. He's never yet given me a reason to fear. Everything else has, but He's giving me reason
Mhm.
to trust.
Yeah.
And so it's substantial to note that even in those moments when you're being tempted to, kind of shake your fist at the heavens,
Mm.
that, you know, it is difficult not to be angry when things are taken. I grant. I'm not trying to be flippant, you know, but it's something that you kind of, it is a difficult thing to let wash over you. You just kind of accept it, recognize the wisdom of God over the will of, your own heart or whatever.
Yes.
So yeah, that's my soapbox.
I like it.
We do have a question from Deborah for Amber. What are your topics about abuse in marriage, relationships? Can you give us an outline of what we can expect for
Yeah.
your?
Sorry, I had my camera off, everybody. I figure I'd turn it back on since the question's for me, but
No, you're okay.
so we have one that is going to be about healing from sexual trauma. And it's going to be one for a man's perspective and his journey through that. And then it's going to be another episode of a woman's perspective and her journey through that. So are your topics about abuse in marriage relationships? Give us an outline of what we can expect. So we have a lot of episodes that will be coming in at the end of July and beginning to middle of August that will release at different times that are going to be on those topics of abuse in marriage and relationships, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and what that looks like, and mental abuse. I mean, I guess that kind of coincides with emotional abuse, but that's basically what we're going to be going into is in those episodes is the different types of abuse and how to cope, how you can heal from that trauma. I would like to do an episode also on toxic marriages and relationships and how you can change the cycle. So even though you're in a toxic relationship, let's say it's both of you, you recognize this is pretty toxic. If both are willing, you can change that cycle. And then I want to talk about toxicity, coming from toxicity, and ensuring that you are honest with yourself and you don't repeat the same cycle in the next relationship. So we're going to have quite a few episodes on these types of things. I hope that answered your question. I'm quite tired, so I don't know if it did.
No, I think that's what she was probably asking about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for sure. Yeah, this is.
I've got a question for you, Amber.
Mm-hmm.
With the abuse side, it's horrible that happens. But one thing I've also noticed from like the Western culture perspective is the hypersensitivity and the victim mindset that we have taken on. Everybody's a victim. How do you differentiate when somebody is claiming to be verbally abused, or if they're just taking on the victim mindset and becoming a victim, because that's our culture now does that a lot. They build up the victim mentality, and that it's not actually abuse, or sometimes it is. Absolutely, it is. Not saying it's not, but I think we also have a culture of victim mentality. And how do you differentiate between those two people that are claiming to be victims, yet it's just this inflated hypersensitivity culture that we're in? Like, he's not talking to me, or
Yes, because these are very sensitive topics, and I think that they're going to be impactful. I don't just schedule these and do it on the fly. I have scheduled phone calls. I have scheduled Skype or Zoom meetings with these people that say they've had this experience, or that they counsel in this realm or what have you. I listen to their background, their credentials, if they have any, and then I want them to run me through the story. And I ask for discernment on whether or not this is the right fit for what I'm trying to portray. Because I want examples of the abuse that you're claiming. And then I also want, I probe them. I say, well, how did you react? What did you say? Did you get physical first? I do probing questions to try and discern whether or not it was the victim mentality. Because I have run into quite a bit of that, especially, and I get it, it's all over. In the Western culture, it's all over. But in the military, because I'm a military wife, I'm also a veteran, so I'm in the community of military. There is so much victim mentality in the military, in the military wives. And I think it's because they get married so quickly, because most of them had a bad upbringing. So they're wired to be the victim. And they don't know that most of them don't recognize it. So it's really, they need to be rewired, but they have to recognize it first. So I've been really good, I think, about discerning if it's the victim mentality or if it was true abuse.
Yeah,
I particularly like about asking for concrete examples. I think is a really good way of discerning this. But it's difficult because you have to then mediate like how intrusive and combative that might feel when you're delivering the question. So I can tell that.
Oh, I
it's
can't
ginger.
hear you. You there?
I think
Yeah.
your mic was not positioned or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, hold on. I think my microphone got unplugged. Actually, let me
Okay.
go back. Hold on.
I think it's great what you do, Amber. That's a very sensitive topic, and it's got to be done with a lot of grace. And
Yes.
yeah, good on you. I couldn't do
Yeah,
it.
we're going to be doing a lot of different ones, right? So this one is going to be a hard one. We're going to do sexual abuse in childhood, and then we're going to get people that had sexual abuse in adulthood, because there's a big difference in how they handle the trauma. Obviously, it is independent of the person, dependent on the person and their personalities. But I do see people that have been abused as children. They have a lot of problems in relationships moving forward. When someone that was abused as an adult, they still might be able to have a relationship, but it's just that trauma, is very painful to look at. But they may not have, they're not wired like a child that was abused. If that makes, I don't think I'm making any sense, but in my head it made sense.
No, that made sense. That did make
Yeah.
sense. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying that when asking somebody, I think it's really wise to discern by asking for concrete examples of
Mhm.
abuse or of neglect or of whatever manipulation, things like that. When somebody says, "I'm with a narcissist," at this point, things like that are buzzwords, and so you do have to be discerning about it.
Yes.
But I was pointing out that you
Yes.
have to be very ginger. I admire the fact that you're obviously aware of the fact that when you're asking these questions, you can feel invasive and combative. And so you have to be aware of how it's coming off when you're asking the person about those kind of things. And so it is a very sticky situation to have a conversation about. And so it's definitely something that is difficult to navigate, forthrightly. It's something that a lot of the time I think people would end up not asking the questions simply because you don't want to cause undue pain or ruffle feathers or things like that. And so it kind of takes a certain sort of like boldness, but also softness. And so that's very much
Yes.
a woman. It's very much a woman's place. I like that. It's got a very feminine touch to it. Is that you're able to ask those questions, because if a man asked those questions, I'm
Oh,
just saying, it would not land. It'd go over like a brick cloud.
Yeah. That would be very awkward.
To even have that subject and want to address it, and because like in this culture, not a lot of women want to come forward about things like that, especially in the church.
Well, men don't want to come forward.
And men don't want to come forward in that.
Yeah.
Because trauma like that causes so many issues down the line if they're not addressed. And you don't know those issues pop up until like there's an outburst or whatever. And not a lot, even in the church, it's like huge because they just don't want to talk about things like that. Pastors avoid it, deacons or whoever in the church avoid that. And trauma-informed care is just like so crucial and so vital in people's lives. And it's a beautiful thing, because like when I saw that, question come up from the other podcast guy, a trauma-informed church kid, that's such a huge thing here at the mission. We're starting to really address and have therapists in here to address that trauma. I mean, having like today, we have a therapist that leads a class, a trauma-informed class, for that, addresses those things. And then you get those things out. So there's actually healing involved. And when there's healing, it's just so incredible to see when people get healed from those things and have productive lives. And it's just so fun to be a part of. But
yeah, that's why I'm a big advocate about, like I said, I was on a podcast yesterday and the pastor asked me, what are we not talking about in church or as pastors that we should be talking about? And I basically was like, the human condition, like exactly what we go through, and y'all are missing it. If you really want to train up a human experience,
Yes.
thank you. I think that when you go through these things and they're not addressed in a biblical manner because your church or your pastor, they don't want to touch on it because they're scared that they're going to lose some people. How are we training up strong Christians? How are we evolving their lives in a biblical manner if we're not willing to make some people uncomfortable? So that's what I'm going to start doing, is getting more pastors on the podcast and having those conversations, and hopefully changing their mind about, maybe they just say, this is going to be a trigger warning next Sunday. If you get triggered easily, or you're highly sensitive or easily offended, you may not want to come to this service, and then make it 18 plus and have those discussions. So I hope and pray that my voice can kind of convince people and ignite a passion in them and a motivation in them to see that they can be very inspirational and helpful if we touch on these subjects.
Amen. And another blessing from the Lord, Spencer has decided to hop on with us. What's up, bud? It's good to see you.
Hello. Thank you, Josh.
Right on. Yeah, it's good to see you, bro.
Sorry, I was picking my daughter up, so I was out. So.
No, you're all right. It's good. It's good. So I knew you wanted to speak to this exact same topic. We're still on the topic of trauma and the formative experiences of the past and things like that, and the need for pastors to genuinely have concern for, be familiar with, and want to deal with the reality of human experience. As such, there's not a lot of pastors who I think are ready to do counseling in that capacity, even though they might be theologically trained. They might have a good list of apologetics arguments, but they might not be equipped to deal with people. And so that's actually one of the main callings of a pastor is, do you love me, Peter? Feed my sheep, tend my flock, feed my lambs. This is the Lord's heart. So what's up, Spencer?
I initially was attracted by the question about, how can you tell between when people are just taking a victim mentality and, is this actual abuse or not? And I mean, you're certainly right. There is absolutely that danger and that concern that's out there in the water. However, I always want to, as a licensed therapist, I always want to be careful about gatekeeping people's definitions of trauma and abuse.
No, that's true, because they have their own,
just because
own version of what occurred. So they feel that way.
Yes, because
right?
in the field, because I do. Yes. I do actually specialize in trauma in my counseling practice. And so in the field, one of the problems we run into is that we don't actually have an objective definition of trauma. And I mean, like, I've worked with clients, for example, I'll just use a very simplistic example where you have two people who have been in a car accident. One, the amount of damage and everything is the same. One person walks away and doesn't have any trouble, and the other person walks away and says, I'm never getting into a car again. And I have dealt with both. And I've seen that happen in military people, because I work in Colorado Springs, which has a high military presence and population.
Oh, we just came from
I've
there.
seen that happen with sexual. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I've seen that happen with sexual abuse. I've seen that happen with, a wide variety of traumatic events. And so the key indicator of trauma is basically like if it feels like the person has lost control over their own, specifically their own somatic or body reactions.
Okay.
If it feels like they have involuntary reactions to events in ways that they have, if not no control, at least like little control over. I mean, like they can exert some influence if they really concentrate hard to stop the heart racing or whatever. But the mere fact that the heart races without, that consent and continues to do so even after they're aware of it, that itself is an indicator of trauma. And then also, of course, the other thing is if it causes behavioral change, so we in the trauma world, we normally talk about kind of like there being a before and an after,
Yes.
before who I was before this and who I am after this.
Yes.
And
Right.
so there tends to be some sharp or noticeable behavioral differences between people who have experienced some kind of traumatic or abusive circumstance or relationship or whatever. And they're noticeably different people afterwards. And so there are some objective or quote unquote objective measures that we can look to in terms of like symptom presentation and behavioral presentation and stuff like that. But by and large, it kind of comes down to this, like it's this very complex and not fully quantifiable interaction between the native genetics of the person, the upbringing of the person, the cultural in which they live, and the expectations that are placed on them from that, both as a particular sex as well as a particular cultural component. There's a myriad of factors that all play in there. And so that's why for me, it's always a matter of you want to be really careful about saying, I know what trauma is and you don't, especially if the other person has experienced it and you haven't.
Oh,
and
I have.
also
I
want to be
hope
really
I wasn't
careful
coming
about
off
saying,
that way.
I went through it just fine. No, you weren't. This is more just like a
generalized,
generic explanation for anybody who might be wrestling with the bigger question of that. Yes. Anyway. And then we also want to be really, really careful about saying, I went through it just fine. Why can't you go through it? Why can't you get over it? Why can't you go through it, without this? Like, why is it affecting you so much? Whatever. So if like with the car accident example, it doesn't mean that the person who walks away and says, I'm never getting behind the wheel of a car again it doesn't mean they're weak. It doesn't mean that they're less strong or they're less capable. It just means that their biopsychological chemistry reacted differently to this stimuli than mine did. And the job that like I as a counselor do is and the way that I work at healing trauma is building resilience, helping the people be able to regain control back over their own lives, starting with their own body, because I'm primarily a somatic psychotherapist.
Oh, good.
And working from that bottom up standpoint to help build more and more control over their autonomic reactions, which then breaks the hold that the trauma has, which then gets them out of that victim mindset, literally from the body up, from the ground up. So I see the value of the question of asking, like, is this victim mindset? Is it real abuse and real trauma? But there's so many complex factors and so many areas for danger and gaslighting and everything else that goes on with that, that we would just want to be super, super cautious about standing on the outside and
judging it. I'm so glad you came on and explained that. Because you're right. It has to do with the car accident analogy was perfect. Someone saying, you're a lot can be traumatic to one person and then it not affect another person. I think where I was coming from, where I was saying I'm trying to discern the victim mentality between trauma or the victim mentality is that since it's such a sensitive topic and an important one to have, I want to make sure that who I bring on It's examples that people aren't going to look at and go, that's nothing. I want it to be very apparent that this was trauma.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, totally. And that's why I really like your approach, because it's not a universal blanket, hit these three, jump over these three hurdles and you are in. It's a one-on-one conversation, which is exactly what I have to do when I do one-on-one counseling. So yes, I really like that approach a lot.
Okay. I'm so glad you came on. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Spencer is somebody who's come on Cosmic Corner quite a few times as well. He's been
I'm totally gonna contact you.
An invaluable force for good on this end. So
I would love that.
Yeah, what a wonderful! This is such a blessing networking conversation episode, isn't it? It's like neat.
Can I second that, Spencer? I would like to get in touch with you as well.
Very knowledgeable. I like that. That's very useful. I would like to have you come on and say, an episode, what is trauma? And educate people on exactly what that looks like, and use the car analogy, and that way they can understand if their spouse is triggered and they think, well, I don't think that's a big deal. It'll give them grace.
Yes. Because the other thing that I do is I do some individual counseling and some couples counseling. It's about 70-30 right now in my practice. And boy, do I ever encounter that all the time, of like the whole of, why can't you just get over it? And I've seen the term like, well, you're just staying in a victim mindset leveraged against it. And sometimes even with like the emphasis of the spiritual component being in there, like, well, you know that Jesus has given you the victory, like why can't you just live in the victory? Like
I've heard that.
Why are you staying oppressed? All those things. Yes. So it's deeply uncomfortable and deeply ugly when that happens, but yes, helping people understand that they don't get to define someone else's experience. Especially when you're in a covenant relationship, particularly when you're in a covenant relationship.
Yes.
So, and so, I my daughter's knocking at the door, so I just got to pause. So keep going, and I'll keep listening, and I'll be right back.
Man, wonderful. This actually, this is morphing into more like a Cosmic Corner conversation at this point than an open mic, but it's really interesting because there's so much that goes into this idea of like how the past that you've experienced forms the present, but how you engage with the future can change your relationship to both the future and the past. And so that's the moment of repentance call that happens, or the moral quandary moment in most stories that you see in the movies or in a comic book or whatever. You have that moment of decision to say, I could either fall into the same tragedy as the villain who's calling me forward, or I could overcome this and either redeem the villain or redeem the situation, or sometimes both, or sometimes neither, and it's like, but at least you have the moment of decision. And if you go down with the ship, you do so with honor rather than as the reason it's sinking, And so there's a lot about that really kind of illuminates like the power of recognizing yourself in someone else and being able to recognize yourself as different from someone else, because you do share some experience with others, but then there is that wall, there is that veil that you never really get to cross. They have to bring you in. Someone has to invite you into themselves to know those pieces. They're not on the house. You don't look at somebody's face and recognize who they are to the core. Not really. Some people are good at reading folks, and you can do the whole, like the mental, I don't forget what they call it. The guy who's supposed to like mind read you or whatever by looking at your face, or it's like, your body language says some things, but you really don't know a person unless they allow you to. There's a place where they allow you to cross that veil
and they share it with you. And heaven forbid you go ahead and like, bring your muddy boots of cynicism in there and start stomping like a rhino in a tea shop. It's not productive. It definitely isn't, but it's also not loving, like especially for your spouse. Like, amen for that. Like you definitely shouldn't be doing that with you. If you can't be safe with your spouse, where in the world are you supposed to be safe?
I know.
Bingo.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. Like,
Yep. Well,
I've got
one of the.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to give an example. You said about the car accident. We had a real life example. I live here in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and we were here during that massive 7.6 earthquake that happened in Southeast Asia. And we live in Chiang Mai, so the buildings are not super tall here. But the building that we particularly lived in was the tallest one in Chiang Mai by a significant margin. So we were on the 14th floor out of 36 floors or something, and we ended up having our apartment was destroyed. The building didn't fall over, but there was cracks and all this sort of stuff, and we were running out of the building during this earthquake. And then we get to the ground floor, and we go to a friend's place. We literally had no shoes, no money. We had one cell phone, and we were terrified. And I had my 6-month-old son over my shoulder running down the fire escape, seeing concrete fall around me, and my wife trailing behind me, and the doors wedged shut because the earthquake shoved the door frames together, and it was very, very terrifying. And I would classify it as traumatic. And then we get down to the bottom, and we go to our friend's house straight away afterwards, and they're like, "Oh yeah, hardly felt that shake." And the the difference was we were 14 floors high, so the building was moving differently than everywhere else in Chiang Mai, and we literally experienced a more intense earthquake than everybody else by the fact that our building is unlivable. And I can see through the solid concrete brick wall like this thick. I can see into the apartment next to me because the wall was falling down, and very, very traumatic. And then almost all of my friends were like, "I hardly felt that." It was just not hardly felt it, but not hardly any damage to their house or anything like that. And we felt like we were just in a different event, and that like you're saying, same event, same people, en masse. And when I was telling people that we lost our home in the earthquake, they almost thought I was making it up.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's so interesting.
And then we went on an airplane, and what's it when the plane bounces?
Turbulence.
Turbulence.
Yeah, when that happened, both my wife and I all of a sudden had this adrenaline come in, and it was like the same feeling of the earthquake for a second. We knew that we weren't in an earthquake, but almost panic happened.
That's understandable.
We kept ourselves grounded. But yeah, we didn't realize that a few months later after this earthquake, it would still trigger some things. And that's why I was asking about the victim mentality. I'm not claiming that I've got victim mentality, but I think it could be viewed as that. Maybe. I don't know.
No, I think you're pretty spot on with the way you felt. That's traumatic. And to think you had your 6-month-old that you were also worried about. I feel like with children, going through a traumatic event with children makes that traumatic event 10 times worse for you, because you're thinking about them and you, and it wouldn't have been as bad if it was just you.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I've never been that scared in my life, for sure. And I think it was because it didn't affect anybody else the same way. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, your reaction to that just that it was so visceral is exactly proof of concept, you know, with what we've been talking about. And so the graphic that I have up here is something from Dr. Bruce Perry. If anyone is aware of him, he's written a book with Oprah on trauma called What Happened to You. That is a really good one. And then this also is aligned with a lot of Dan Siegel's work from The Whole Brain Child or Mind Insight. So this is kind of like the just citing my sources here, so to speak. But one of the things, I was kind of thinking of this in reaction to what Deborah had mentioned about that people need to feel safe, especially people that have been abused. They need to feel safe. And that absolutely is true, because I know, like, for your point, Amber, about, you know, if someone's saying, why can't you just get over it? Well, okay, that's kind of coming at it from this reason first, you know, from the cognitive prefrontal cortex brain top down, so to speak. So we more or less have like an alignment there of like, reason is that prefrontal cortex, relate is the limbic system, that kind of mammal brain basically, and then regulate is our brain stem, our lizard brain. And in that moment, from what you were describing, Joel, because of the, you know, deep brain structures that are involved, your lizard brain was going crazy. Your lizard brain was on overdrive. And if someone sat down and said, okay, let's talk about, you know, the best way for you to efficiently get out of this building. Let's plot it out and plan it out and make sure we have a right, you know, map and those kind of things. That's perfectly legitimate reasoning behavior. The problem is you're not safe in that moment, and your child is not safe in that moment.
Right.
Literally
so
not
what's
safe.
needed is regulate. Yes, literally. Yes. Because very often this felt sense of safety is primarily centered in the psychology of the person. I don't mean it's only centered there, but primarily centered there. But that still is a very real lack of safety. It's very, very real because it's felt. And so even in that moment, like, what you needed was to, like, you know, breathe better, to solve one problem at a time that's manageable and simple in that kind, and or to get into some semblance of safety. That's what would bring the regulation. And then from there, check, okay, is my kid okay? Or is my spouse okay? Like, okay, are we good? And then from there, be able to go, okay, let me think this through. What's this going to mean for our apartment, for our finances, for all these kind of things? And just so too often when we work with people who have experienced trauma, either a traumatic event or ongoing chronic, you know, traumatic relationships, we try to, like, come at them from the top down. Well, you know, it's not really like that. Well, you know that this isn't really as bad as you're thinking. Well, you know, it's not really what's happening. Frankly, that often makes it worse, because very often the person knows good and well. They know good and well it's not as bad as they are feeling. But the whole point of trauma is that there's a disconnect between the regions of your brain, that your lizard brain is screaming at you while your thinking brain is saying, why are you reacting like this? What is going on?
It's like a panic attack. Like,
yes,
you have an actual disconnection.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yes, you absolutely do. And so it has about as much effect as telling, you know, your angry spouse, hey, calm down. So
men don't say that to your woman.
No, never do. As someone who's been married for 19 years, I can tell you, never do.
Praise God.
And so, yeah, that's really the bottom line there, is that, you know, when someone is experiencing a trauma response, you have to start with that sequence of engagement. You have to start with regulation. Okay, like, and I mean, I've experienced this not on a trauma level, but on just an emotional level with my 8-year-old daughter. So we talk like if she's really freaking out about something, but what if this happens? Well, what about? And I hold her hands and I say, okay, look at my eyes. Let's breathe. And we breathe together, which activates mirror neurons, which signals safety, which gives signs of welcome, you know, all those things. And then I, you know, give her some kind of affirmation. Are you safe? Are you here with me? Will you be okay? Those kind of things. And then we talk it through. And then we say, okay, let's think through how we could have done this better. Or your brain is telling you what if. Well, let's actually think that through. But only after we have regulated and connected first. So
right.
That's all, Josh.
So really, if you think about it, it's kind of like when somebody is having that need to reach out from the inside, they're asking you to peek inside for just a moment with them into that veil that I was talking about before, right? Where it's like, I'm being vulnerable with you. Here's a piece of me. And then instead of walking in carefully, right, you have this kind of disjointed, they already have the feeling of being disjointed from their proper thought life. And then you bring your own in there, bring the same thing, and making them feel so like alienated from themselves by being you're affirming the wrong part is what I think what we're coming to here. It's like the person who's doing that often thinks, I'm being rational. If I would just be reasonable, then maybe if I be calm and reasonable, that'll be better. Your calmness doesn't change the fact that what you're engaging is the wrong piece. You're engaging the wrong piece. You're talking about what's on top, and they're trying to show you what's underneath, and you're dismissing what's underneath because you know what's on top doesn't match. They, like they said, they already know that. They do know that, but they're inviting you to come in, and that's a privilege. You know what I mean? So oftentimes we take trust for granted because we think we need to know how to fix something. This is very much a male problem. We want to be fixers. We don't like to have to do the arduous process of listening and just being there in the thing that's happening. I've learned how to just shut up when stuff is being poured out. And I need to know how to do that. I've learned how to do that. It sucks a lot, but oh my God, is it eye-opening? Like if you just shut up and listen, like it's really difficult. You don't like it and you're not going to like it, but I don't know that you're supposed to like it at first. But eventually what you're doing is getting almost a college level masterclass on your spouse and or significant person in your life who you're, like you were talking about, your daughter and so forth. It's like somebody's allowing you that space. If somebody allows you that space, you need to recognize that what they're doing is giving you permission into something like their garden, and you need to be aware of that. You need to not be pulling strings. Like just sometimes it really is just that much better to recognize where the privilege that you're being granted in the moment when somebody is being vulnerable and honest about something.
Well, that's that second portion of the neurosequential hierarchy there, the relate piece. That's the trust. That's the connection point. And it's funny because you said like, guys struggle with that. And yes, we absolutely do. And so when I work with the couples that I work with, I usually frame it to the guy because they're just so focused on like, well, if she just looked at it differently, it would solve the problem. Or if I just explained this fact, it would make the problem go away or whatever.
Right.
But
just
of course, they're
troubleshooting
coming
over
at that
here
from the perspective of they don't have her brain. Yes. But like they don't have her brain. So it probably wouldn't actually solve the problem. But the other difficult, and so what I have to kind of explain to them is rather than say, give up that desire to solve the problem because that's so deeply masculine. I usually try to like reframe how we solve the problem. You don't solve the problem the top down way with that, like, logic, reason, solution, objective, behavioral, factual approach. You solve the problem by connecting, by creating, by speaking to the limbic system that is screaming for attention. That is solving the problem by and large. And like, I've seen this happen so many times with my wife where she will, express something to me and I just kind of join her and empathize with. And then honestly, at the end of it, she's good. Like she's kind of solved the problem on her own, in her own brain, because she's very intelligent and very capable. And so she doesn't even honestly need me except for that relational piece. So,
I want to talk about the brain really quick. You can probably really enlighten everyone, but We're in a society where we say that men and women are the same, and we were not even made the same. Like, they've done scans of the brain of a woman and the brain of a man, and they literally think differently. They use a portion of their brain at a different moment in time that's completely opposite of the opposite sex. So
I find it amazing that we needed science to work that out.
I know. Well, some people, they like the science backing, because if you tell them that, they're like, women and men are the same. I don't care what you think. And a lot of
I do not
women,
think like a woman.
yeah, a lot of women, especially now, want to be thought of as, the same as a man, because they think that that is going to give them power, and respect and things like
simpler.
that. And unfortunately, we're just not made the same. Our bodies aren't the same. A man is absolutely going to be stronger than me. I've seen men that are my same size, and they're still stronger than me. So we're not the same. And if you hate me on this, I apologize, but I am not changing that opinion. Or that fact.
You go, girl. That is exactly right. We need to stop pretending that everybody's equal and everybody's the same. I think everybody's valued, but if people are very different.
See, they're valued the same in God's eyes, but they're not the same.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's it's crazy that the world has gotten to this point where everybody's hypersensitive and everybody's offended that you can't say, if something's different, then it's wrong. And that's untrue. People can be different. I've got an extraordinarily different personality than all of you guys, and so do you. We're not all the same, but that's actually how God created this incredible world with these incredible flavors, incredible colors, incredible differences everywhere in nature. If we're all the same, it'd be very bland and very boring. And it's good to recognize God's creation.
Right? So as a couple, we wouldn't function as well. The women have a different sense of things than the men do. So in my opinion, if you truly want to be a feminist, and you should look at the power a female has, and that distinct difference, and lean into it and appreciate it and see that it is so beneficial we are made this way.
Yeah, men and women have men usually have a very macro view of the world, and women have a more of a micro view. So if you were to take, just on average, not I'm not saying some women can't be are thinking about world wars and things like that, but in general, most men are concerned about world wars, what's happening on Wall Street, that sort of stuff, and most women are thinking about more day-to-day stuff, the kids and like where they're going to school and things like that.
Just we're thinking of conversations that we had 20 years ago and evaluating them. Like, men don't do that.
Better watch what I say.
You know why? You know why? Because men are foreign policy and women are home relations. That's why. Men are meant to engage with what's outside, and women are meant to beautify and uphold purity and truth. And men are supposed to be the guard and the protection. They're also supposed to be the, like Jupiter, protecting the earth, being the giant gravitas in their sphere that allows them to operate, and we kind of take the blunt of it and allow them to live in that place. You see those kind of parody pictures that exist on the internet of guys with beat, filthy hands like mine that are made of leather, and then their wives' hands are all beautiful and dainty, and it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. I think that's lovely. I think that's lovely.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't think women are capable. I was a single parent, and I was changing my tire. I was doing my oil. I built my kids' beds. I mowed the lawn, and I liked doing that stuff. I felt very empowered and capable. But I don't do those things now because my husband does them. I don't have to. So why don't I put my time and energy in the things that I can really benefit our family?
I think what's crazy, you were talking about the brains of men and women not being the same, right? like with all this gender swapping stuff, men wanting to be women and saying they're women and women trying to be men. And it's causing this just huge cluster of just craziness and all that chaos. And no one's, it's got to be a psychologist's nightmare, really, if you think about it, mental health nightmare where men trying to be women and they don't even think like women do. Mm-hmm. And I keep on seeing stuff and it's just like, it just drives me bonkers.
I think it's important. This is bringing it back to trauma.
Yeah,
I think it's important to realize that we need to give grace to those people. Yeah. They're struggling inwardly, yeah. And most of them have very traumatic stories. Yeah. And that's why they're confused. That's why they're moving in that direction. So in reality, grace needs to be given and kind of like a little soft spot for them, because we know that they really just need God.
Yeah.
I was listening to one of Jordan Peterson's things yesterday, and he was talking about this exact thing, that you get these people trying to be, these men trying to be women, and less likely, but women trying to be men. And what he was saying is, in general, that women see everybody as not necessarily as like kind of infants, people that are in need. So when kind of what you're saying, when you've got a man dressing up as a woman, that this is what Jordan Peterson was saying anyway, that these women will, in general, see that there must be something of concern and need grace, and they put them in the victim mindset straight away. However, there are men dressed up as women that are 100% predators, and we can't erase that, because I'm not saying that you're not thinking that, but that it's given these predators the moral high ground to be able to go into women's bathrooms, to be able to basically predator on scale, on mass. And that they're allowed to do that, and that now we as men, I mean, I'm a father. If I saw a man dressed up as a woman near my son in a bathroom, looking at him up and down, he would get a beating. You know,
it's really the devil. The devil saw this opportunity and took advantage of it, and now the people 100%. That fall into that portion of sin and mental illness, they're taking advantage of it because there was the opportunity to do so. And that's where our Western mentality is.
The difficulty is too, that it's opportunistic. It's like, just like any demonic activity is, it's opportunistic. Right. And so it's not merely just that the people are there. I understand like the visceral reaction, you know, like I get that. But at the same time, especially us as believers are in fact meant to be a representation and a standard that goes beyond our visceral reactions as well. And so while that's merited and we have this moment of like, you know, and there is the reaction and there's that strangeness and there's that difference, it's also like, what is happening in and around this person's spirit that is allowing for this to get to that place for them? Because it's obviously like, I can't imagine living, like, I'm sure you guys are aware that the community that we're talking about has like a suicide rate that's unheard of. Like,
it's off the charts.
It's unsettling, because as somebody who's worked very difficult, like I've wanted to use Cosmic Corner as a project to try to combat meaninglessness and the lack of identity and the falling apart and the fragmentation of the human person and the value of life and reality and being an image of God, right? Like there are people that are living right now who are like what Joel is describing, like they're walking around in a costume of their own design, this furnishing that they've made, that they're fabricating, that they're using as a presentation. But well, that's the thing, is like sometimes what we're perceiving as a person who's like, so the face of evil is the face of need, is what I'm saying.
Yes, that's where I was going to. I mean, you that's put beautifully.
Yeah, the face of evil is the face of need, right?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, is that every person that lives and breathes and has their being is doing so because the Logos is sustaining them, you know. And so it's like we have the opportunity in and with them to do something that God would love to do, which is to redeem every part of this person. But it's difficult because we in ourselves can't see it, you know. And so what we do see is exactly that. We'll see in them something that exists on the outside, and for us that exists as a threat. Naturally, it's what's on the outside of the expected norm, the outside of the, you know, it's like what Spencer was talking about earlier. You need this match between your expectation and your lived experience, where you have this experience of threat and danger and fight and flight and all those things. It's those things that disrupt you that give you those experiences. But all the more so the other person is having that almost on a continual basis, you know. And so it's like it's difficult sometimes to know where the grace should land on how you approach a situation like that, because there would be this like visceral reaction even for me, because I know what you're talking about. It's a defense of your children, like you said earlier. If it was just me, it's like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna ignore you. But it's like, if my children are here now, there's this different level of threat that's amplified and is attached to so many things, you know. And it's like, it's difficult to mediate that. It really genuinely is, you know. So it's just like an honesty from my own heart, being somebody who lives in the Bay Area, and I see on a pretty regular basis this people that present this way, and maybe I'm a little bit more deadened to it because of that, and I'm a little bit more numb to it because I see it so regularly. But I've come to realize that a lot of these people are just so in need of someone to say, like, you know, you matter, and I'm glad that you're here.
Yes.
You know, it's such a weird, like, upside down world that we live in, man. It is very weird and upside down, but we need to then be upside down to it in order to fix it. We need to be the thing that seems upside down to it.
Walk around in
Yeah. There was an interview with a few transgender people, and it was really raw. I can't remember where I saw it, but every single one of them had past sexual trauma. And they said that that was sort of the turning point. Some of them said that they felt disassociated with themselves, and almost like they were outside looking in. And then others said it made it where they no longer wanted to be with the opposite sex just because it felt unsafe. And so there's a lot of trauma in that community.
A good friend of mine is trans, and her biological sex, she said she was having a conversation with me about Christianity and things like that. And she said, you know, I want your take, Joel. Why do you, like, what's your take on this from a Christian perspective, the fact that I am trans? And I said, which I literally was a spark from the Holy Spirit, I believe, because I'm not smart enough to come up with this myself. I said, I don't think God makes mistakes.
Yeah.
And he is a mastercraft of his work. And if he made you a woman, he didn't make a mistake. I don't believe that he can make mistakes. And that was a really good answer for her, because she was under the assumption that I thought there was something wrong with her brain, you know. But I'm saying that you were actually made perfect in God's eyes, and you were made as a woman, affirming her biological sex, and that God doesn't make mistakes. I don't believe that he can. And it's a deception en masse to convince you that you're not in the image and likeness as the one who made you. And so she was, for once, was like very receptive to Christianity. It's been a long journey, but one thing that I found that has worked really well with this community is to not try and convince or win a debate with them.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they don't care how much you love until they can see how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because I was just having these conversations with her. And for example, we were talking about politics and being trans. She completely hates Donald Trump. And we were just having a chat about it. And I said, I actually don't mind him. And I said, but isn't this great that we can have a conversation and you don't like something that I like and I don't like something that you like, but we can come together and have solid conversations and not hate each other. Because that's how it was in the old days. We were literally playing chess together, just in a cafe playing chess. And it was like, this is what it was like back in, the 1950s, 60s. People would have chess, they would play a game or checkers, and then they would have these polar opposites of politics or worldviews, but they would still communicate with each other. But today we have, if you, for example, Donald Trump, if you like Donald Trump and I don't, then I don't even want our families mixing. Like it's this hyper sensitive polar opposite enemy creating mindset that we have that enables us to create echo chambers of ourselves where we only talk to people with the same mindsets, and you can never actually hear somebody out, and then people get trapped in a mindset because they're not allowed to hear another mindset. And it was really great. And then it obviously led from her being against me in politics, and then we're just discussing that to her worldview being an atheist and mine being Christian, and how we can discuss that and still remain friends. And and when she realized that I was still on this pursuit of friendship, then she started asking about what's my worldviews on the LGBT side. And because I had established this value of trust that I still want to pursue a friendship, even if we don't agree, she knew that I wasn't out to get her. I wasn't like out to win this argument or anything like that, whether she agreed with me or not. I'm not trying to win her feelings. I will speak truth because it's okay to disagree. And now when we started talking about God, she knew that I wasn't fluffing around the edges or dancing around the sides, avoiding the conversation. I was very direct and very clear with what I believed, but did it in truth and love. And it had a very, very strong impact on her. And, God's still working through her. But I just think that's the great attitude to go that I've found that has worked quite well in this side of like how do you even talk to the LGBT side without them picking up their pitchforks or vice versa, and it's to do it in so much love that the truth is hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think that especially in that community, but the difference in politics too, it's so important to remember you're not trying to change their mind. You can't do that. God can only do that, and they're the ones that have to choose it. So all you can do is share the truth, the biblical truth, in a loving manner and a non-judgmental way, and still love them. Like I respect. I had a guy. I say a guy. It was his sex was a guy. He was a female. He was in the Space Force in Colorado. It was the first time I had been in a professional area and seen a transgender person. So it was a little, it took me back a little bit. And then I was realizing, like, why am I acting like this? They're still a person. They're still one of God's children. So just respect them, give them respect, treat them with respect. You don't have to agree to love someone.
Yeah. In Thailand, they're really hard to tell if they're a ladyboy or a boy.
Yeah.
It's the, I guess, the Asian genes of they don't really grow facial hair that well anyway. And but they for like 100 years they've had trans people in Thailand. And but the thing is what I've noticed is they're not saying that they're female. They say that they're a ladyboy. They're not they're actually not confused. They just this is like they just want to live this way and dress this way, but they still say that they're a man. Yeah. And they still use the men's bathrooms, these ladyboys. It's actually quite hilarious. You know, you walk in and then this lady walks in next to you and next to the urinal, and it's like, oh. But and you can't tell either. Like they're
no, I've seen some of them. You cannot tell. They're and most of them are gorgeous. Like you look at them and you're like, my God. Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, it's terrible, but it's impressive.
Yeah.
Man, this has been an interesting conversation. This has been a very interesting
I didn't expect to be talking about this. That's for sure. I appreciate being able to put my opinion out there and not have all hell break loose on me, because it's an opinion that's not common nowadays.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this might be the first and the last time Josh lets me come on here.
No, you are by far not no, believe me. We've had some folks on here that I could tell you stories. It's something else. No, this was very good. I enjoyed this. I thought this was a really cool. Spencer coming on, my buddy Mike coming on, and 2 new podcasts to plug. This was a really good episode. Like this was a really great open mic, and we covered a whole swath of topics that were really cool, and I feel good about this one. We're approaching the 2-hour mark and pretty much give you guys opportunity if you want to plug your channel one more time, and then we'll round off the edge here. So I guess starting with you, Joel, go ahead and plug your channel and let us know where we can find you and what it is that you're doing, and then to Spencer, and then we'll round off with Amber.
Cool. So I'm the host of the Jesus Magnet podcast, where we have incredible testimonies come onto our show. And we're moving into the space of amazing discussions. So hopefully with Josh and other people, even on the show, I'd love to invite them onto our channel as well. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just type in the Jesus Magnet podcast, and it's a big purple logo. You'll see it, and it'd be great to have some more people listening.
Awesome.
Me next?
No, go ahead, Spencer. We'll do you last.
Thank you. I was about to say I couldn't remember the order. I'm getting tired.
The best for
last.
Worries.
There's no test. Don't worry.
Okay.
So my podcast is called Trauma Informed Church Kid. Like you see on the screen. It is hosted through Podbean, but we're on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple, all the others. Just wrapped up season 1 of the podcast, and we're taking a summer break, a hiatus of sorts, but we will start back up with season 2 in September, at the beginning of September. And also at that same time, I'll start up a Substack that will kind of dive a little deeper into the topics, because my podcast format is trying to be, as I say, like trying to cover these issues without hurting your head or your heart. So I try to kind of keep it to 30 minutes, which of necessity means we kind of have to hit things at a high level. And so in season 1, it became pretty clear that I need to, kind of diverge a little bit with the way that I approach things. So there'll be kind of like 2 different content streams going, one Substack and then one on the podcast. But anyway, all that to say, all of the episodes are archived and are available on Spotify and YouTube. My YouTube handle is @ChurchKidPod. It's the same handle for X as well. So feel free to jump on there. So.
My turn?
Yep, go ahead.
Cool. I'm Amber. I really appreciate you guys having me on today. Meeting all of you, having those conversations was amazing. You can find me at boundbygracepodcast.com. You can contact me that way if you feel like you have something laid on your heart that you think you'd be a good guest for. I'm willing to speak with you and see if we can move forward in collaborating. I'm on all the streaming services. They should all be under Bound by Grace podcast, but most of them are on the website. You can just go directly from there. I'm also on YouTube, and I think on YouTube it's Bound by Grace Pod.
You can also go to the description
podcast
below this video and find all of Amber's links as well. I have them in the description down below because I was prepared this time. Aha!
Yeah.
Yeah, this was wonderful. I appreciate you guys. This was a really good time. Thanks again to Joel coming on all the way from Thailand. That's incredible. It's super early morning for you, so that's pretty rad. Other side of the planet. And thanks, Spencer, for coming on and talking with us. Always a pleasure. And thanks again to Amber, new friend coming on here. And I'm glad to be able to help out with the, plugging your channel and everything and getting things started with that. If you'd like to see more of Amber, definitely check the links in the description. I will be on her channel on the 26th, was it?
26th. Yeah.
The 26th with
which we're going to live
Jalen.
stream it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. With my co-host Jalen, going to be talking about the men's perspective on ministry and how expensive trust is, in the importance of trust in marital relationships. And so that's going to be really awesome. Hopefully that's going to be very edifying to those who listen to it. And I know that Jalen's going to have some cool stuff to add to that as well. If you like what I'm doing outside of the open mic and everything like that, if you want to hear more about the image of God and answering the meaning crisis, like I was talking about before, check out Cosmic Corner. You can find that by looking Cosmic Corner up in the search tab, or and find my playlist that way. Or if you go to the Faith Unaltered homepage, click on playlists, you'll find Cosmic Corner playlist there. It's exclusively there. It's not on Spotify or anywhere else. I'm a YouTube exclusive. And so if you like that, go and check it out there. Subscribe to this channel if you like what we're doing here. Like this video, share it with whoever you think might benefit from our talk here about overcoming trauma and being able to really identify and listen to one another and things like that. I think it's a really productive way of approaching things like that. I'm always blessed by when Spencer comes on to do these things. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. This was a really fun episode. With that said, anybody that's still listening, we love you. Have a good night. God bless. And stay like Christ.